What's going on? Happy New Year. Rob here with Dark Side. For starters, Happy New Year to everyone. I'm glad that everybody's here. I'm glad we're all safe and sound, and just welcome to the year 2022. This video is going to be, as you can tell by the title, going into a gun store in the year 2022. What is that going to be like for us? What is that going to be like for new gun owners that are looking to get firearms, etc.? So in this video, I hope to break that down for you, give you tips, tricks when you're going into the gun store, so that way you don't get swindled, so that way you have a great experience, you don't have any negative experiences, etc. So without further ado, let's get started. Now, we know that we want to get a firearm. A lot of the things that are going to go into in this video are going to be things that we want to implement prior to actually getting to the firearm store. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is know what we want. Okay, the reality is not all gun stores, but some gun stores, it's kind of like going to get your oil change. All right, you're gonna go in there for oil change, and the next thing you know, you got a whole new engine and new tires and all this other stuff. All right, they're telling you all of this other stuff. So knowing what you want when you go in there and being firm on that will help you and aid you, so that way you don't get kind of persuaded in different directions, etc., etc. A lot of gun stores are trying to sell things. They're trying to sell guns that may have been on the shelf for a long time, and those may not be the ones that are good for you. So knowing what you want, what that does is a lot of YouTube, asking questions, asking friends, understanding firearms more so than I just want a 9mm, I just want a 45, I just want a Glock, whatever the case is. Okay, know what firearms you want, narrow it down so that way when you go in there, you can say, hey, I want to see the M&P 2.0 9mm. The compact. I want to see the full size. Can I see the M&P Shield? Can I see a Glock 43? Can I see a Glock 19? Can I see a CZ P10C? Can I see a Springfield XD Mod 2? Like, these are different firearms that you want to go in there and look for, and you want to have it already laid out on, hey, this is what it is. Even if you have to write it down like a grocery list, do that what's best for you. But go in there knowing what you want and go straight to the counter, and if you got to pull a ticket, but say, hey, I'm here, I'm looking for this and this, do you guys have this? So that's the first thing that you want to do, is do as much research as you can beforehand, and then narrow down some guns, right? What do you want the firearm for? If you want the firearm for concealing, you obviously probably don't want a full-size firearm, right? You want to go with something compact, micro compact, etc. If you know that you want it for in the house, you may want to go with a full-size firearm. So there's ways to narrow it down, caliber, whether you want a 9mm, 40, 45, whatever the case may be, 380. Whether you want a revolver, whether you want a semi-automatic pistol, etc. So knowing what you want and going from there will really help you in your experience. Okay. 2. All right, so tip number 2 would be knowing the correct terms, knowing different parts of a firearm, right? Not going into the store and then saying like, hey, this is a clip or whatever the case is. Know a magazine. The reality is you want to go in there with as much confidence, because if you go in there and they can sniff out that there may be a lack of confidence or lack of knowledge, they may try to swindle you. So go in there with as much confidence as possible. Know your terminologies, triggers, knowing different terms of the firearms, trigger, slide, magazine, etc., etc. And then you will know that by also doing your research on certain firearms, so that way you can say, okay, this gun has this feature, I want this, or whatever the case may be, right? So that'll help you out, knowing correct terms, and then they'll understand like, okay, this person really knows what they want, so let me go ahead and get them what they want. Okay. All right, our next tip is knowing how to handle firearms, because the reality is once you get to that firearm and you say, hey, can I see the Smith & Wesson M2.0 compact, they're going to hand you the firearm, and then they're going to clear it. They're going to give it to you like this, and then knowing how to handle that. They're going to be watching, right? Because they're selling you a gun, so they have to make sure that they have in good faith selling you this gun. So making sure that you have the proper manipulation techniques and that you understand the fundamental firearms rules, right? So when you get the firearm's going to be handled facing down like this, and they're going to hand it to you, right? So making sure that you grip it correctly, you're pointing it in a safe direction, away from customers, away from anybody walking, etc., and that you're pulling the slide back, pressing out in a safe direction, finger off the trigger until we're ready, asking to press the trigger. Some guns, they may say like, hey, we don't want you dry firing or whatever the case may be. So asking like, hey, is it okay if I pull this trigger to check it out? If they say yes, then go ahead and proceed and see how that feels for you, right? While we're in this part also, that goes back to checking out the firearm and seeing how it feels to us. A lot of times people ask me like, well, hey, what's the best firearm for a woman? What's the best firearm for me? What's a good firearm to get? The reality is the best firearm is the one that's good for you. Like, I mean, there's so many different firearms, but I don't want to tell you something and then you pick it up and then you're just like, hey, this feels terrible in my hand, right? So when we're at this step and we say like, hey, we want to go in here, we want to see the Smith & Wesson 2.0 compact, which is this gun, which is why I keep saying that. So you go in there and you say like, hey, I want to see this particular firearm, and then they hand it to you knowing what we're looking for, right? So one of the first things that we're looking for is how does it feel in the hand as far as the grip, right? Just first purchase, as far as putting our hand on it, how does that feel, right? Some guns, similar to this one, come with different back straps. So these are adjustable. So you can change these out. Asking that, hey, does this come with adjustable back straps? Does this come with different back straps on it? Okay, how does that feel? So how does the grip texture feel in your hand? Is it too aggressive? Is it not aggressive enough? What is our pinky doing on the firearm, right? Is our pinky hanging off right here to where we can barely grip it? Is it right here? You know, how is our pinky feeling on the firearm, right? How does the slide feel? What are the serrations on the slide feeling like, right? Are they aggressive? Are they not aggressive? Is it easy to rack back? Is it not easy to rack back? Facing in this direction, how does the magazine release feel? Is it easy to eject the magazine? Do we have to adjust our hand, or is it just we can kind of push down and get it? How does the trigger feel on the gun? Again, asking, hey, is it okay if I press the trigger? Yes, it is. Pressing out, safe direction, not near anybody, pressing the trigger. How does that feel to you? So these are things that we want to test out. So when we're going and we're saying like, hey, what's the best gun? It's the best gun for you. And you go through this whole process to understand, hey, how does this feel? You may pick it up and be like, you know what? I've seen so many great reviews on this, but it just feels crazy in my hand. I don't like it. I don't like the way the trigger press feels, et cetera, et cetera. I don't feel comfortable with it. That may not be the firearm for you, and that's okay. That's also why we go into this with a list of different firearms that we want to check out. So we can say, you know what? That may not be the one for me, and then we can move on to the next one. So a lot of preparation prior to going to the gun store, so that way when we go in there, we say, hey, this is what we're looking for, this is what the research we've done, and can we see these 3 firearms? I would say narrow it down to about 3 firearms is a pretty good list. Any longer than that, you'll probably be in the store a little bit too long. There's other people going on, so I think 3 is a pretty good number, and you can kind of get through those within quick succession. Now, the next tip is asking questions. Hey, have you heard any reviews of this firearm? Is this can this firearm take a light? Can this firearm take an optic? Is it easy to conceal? What's it like getting parts for this firearm? What's it like getting magazines? Saying, hey, I'm looking at getting this Smith & Wesson. Do you guys have Smith & Wesson magazines in here? Right? Because this may be your local gun store that you're going to go to, and you want to be able to get things that you need for that firearm. Hey, do you guys have ammo for this firearm? Things like that. So asking as many questions as possible. Now, granted, they're not going to know everything. Not every counter associate has shot every firearm or whatever the case may be. But they can point you in a general direction and may have a good idea of the generalizations of the firearm and the reviews from other customers that have came in here. So that's also good. Lastly, go with a friend. Don't be afraid to go with somebody who's helped you out. Hopefully you've got training. Go with an instructor, go with a friend, etc., who may have a little bit more knowledge, and they can walk you through the process as well. And then if there's 2 people, generally speaking, the counter people are going to be a little bit more susceptible to listening to people, etc. Like I said, the reality is that a lot of times when you go into gun stores and you look, let's say, green, right, people may tend to take advantage of you. So going in there with confidence, preparing prior to will give you a good outcome on buying firearms within 2022. So it's the beginning of the year. It's going to be a great year for us. A great year for shooting. Great year for safe shooting. Great year for people getting into to firearms. So it'll be pretty amazing. Drop any questions you have below. Please click the link to like and subscribe to the channel. I'm going to be pushing out a lot of good content. I want to push out as much content as I can to inform, so that way we can grow this great community that we have here of new shooters. So if you have any questions, drop them down below. I'll see y'all on the next one. Peace.